Welcome, everybody, to MoCo Underground Writers Showcase. Yep, so I'm going to have you go ahead and take your seats, and then we'll get started with our formal program, because it's so formal. I'm Julia Taglier. I'm the founder of MoCo Underground Writers Showcase, and I would like to welcome you to our reading this evening. I'd like to thank, first of all, the Sandy Spring Museum for this wonderful space and for all of the support and placeholding that they do for the arts in this community and around Montgomery County. So please make sure that if you haven't been to this museum before, that you do take the time to come back, because it really is a gem in Montgomery County. Let's see, our next MoCo Underground reading will be on June 12th, so you can mark your calendars for that. It's in person right back here. If you want to stay up to date on everything that MoCo Underground is doing in the community and all of our writers and all of the great things that they do, there's an email sign up on that left side of that table back there. You can sign up to get my newsletter, which comes out at a very irregular rate so it doesn't flood your inbox. I think that is all I have to say for this evening's welcome and introduction. Pretty informal beyond that. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our first reader of the evening, and that is Jessica Robinson. Please come on down.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Tonight I'm going to read from my new memoir. It's a memoir and stories, which means that, can you hear me okay? Okay. So each chapter is a story, and they're in a kind of chronological order. And when you read it in chronological order, hopefully it's a memoir. That's the idea behind that. So I'm going to read an excerpt from chapter 18, There's Always One. About 15 years ago, I started working with construction companies. They have become regular clients of mine. When a new building is nearing completion, they hire me to videotape training on the equipment in the building. The trainings go on for 2 to 6 months, so I end up getting a lot of long-term work from construction companies. When I started working with them, I was the only woman around. I didn't see any other women anywhere on the job. But over the years, that has finally started to change. Last year, I got hired by a new client, and Sarah was the project manager on the site. On our first day, I went to meet Sarah and the guys because everyone else was a man. I arrived on the job site with my hard hat and my vest, and I had my video camera set up and ready to go. I said hi to Sarah and then to everyone else. There were 12 men. The introductions went smoothly until I got to the last guy. He said, what is that, 4K? He was talking about my camera because it's a high-resolution camera. It was the way he said it. I could tell he was gonna be trouble. So I deflected with humor, as I often do. I said, yeah, but I don't shoot these trainings in 4K because no one wants to see you guys close up. Yeah. Everybody laughed, and I thought, all right, good, we're moving on. But no, he kept going. He said, can I borrow it? I said, no, I need it for work. I was trying to shut him down, but he kept going. He said, because you know, the wife and me could make some good videos with that. I mean, you know, in the bedroom. Yeah. Why did he have to go there? I didn't know what to do, and lacking any other good ideas, I just turned my back to him, and when I did, my eyes met Sarah's, and she rolled her eyes and said, there is always one. After college, immediately after college, I went to work in the feature film industry, and then after a few years of that, I decided I would go and work for a corporate video production company. So I sent out my resume to the hundreds of video production companies in the tri-state region, and finally, after months of waiting, this guy, Bob, called me up and invited me to come work for him for a trial period. I needed the money, so I said yes. I showed up on Monday to Bob's place. Bob worked out of his home in New Jersey. He lived on the 3rd floor. The 2nd floor was the editing suite, and the 1st floor was the reception area and the kitchen. Bob was about 65, retired military. The editor who worked on the 2nd floor, he was also retired military. The only other person who worked there was the receptionist, who was not retired military, but an older woman. Now, after Bob gave me the grand tour, he led me into his office to give me my orientation. The first thing he said to me was, "You know, we all make the coffee here. If I ask you to make the coffee, it's not because you're a woman." I've made a lot of coffee. I was fine with that. But then Bob continued, "And sometimes you will have to answer the phone. Let me see you do it." Yeah, I don't know if it was the fact that he made me pretend to answer the phone over and over, or the fact that he gave me directions like louder, smile when you answer the phone. I want to see you smile. Or that he watched closely as I did it, but something about the whole experience made me feel like I was on the casting couch. When that was done, I was free to go about my day, which involved mostly running errands, printing labels, labeling VHS tapes, because this was a long time ago. And that's how the rest of the week went. Every day I did menial tasks, and every day I was called into Bob's office for uncomfortable conversations. One day he shared with me that he and the editor did drugs. Another day he told me that this one time for Halloween, he and the editor dressed up as women. He'd say this stuff and then he'd watch me like he was trying to shock me. I didn't react, partly because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction, and partly because I had just come from living in the East Village. On Friday of that week, that first week, Bob took me to a room I'd never been in on the 2nd floor. It was an editing suite. I mean, it was a closet, but it had an editing system of sorts in it. It was old and unfamiliar, the deck that he had in there, and Bob asked, "Can you use this?" I said, I can try. Then he sat me down in front of the monitor, and he sat next to me. It was a small room, so our knees were touching. He told me he wanted me to edit his vacation footage. Then he watched me while I watched the monitor. He told me what I was seeing. He'd gone on vacation recently in Sweden, and this was footage of an outdoor art exhibition that was about control. What I was seeing was a naked guy walking another naked guy on a dog leash. As Bob watched me for a reaction that I refused to give him, I thought, yeah, this is about control. On Monday morning, Bob called to tell me I didn't need to come in. My trial period had passed and I had failed. Even though I needed the money, I have never been so relieved to be fired from a job. A few hours later, another guy from a different video production company in New Jersey called me and asked if I could start work later that week, and I said yes. And I started working for Dan 2 days later. His office was one large room with a glass wall that you could see the rest of the office suite through. Dan sat at his desk and made phone calls. I sat at my desk and edited actual business footage on a real editing system. On my first day, while I was working at editing, Dan was sitting at his desk and he was just kind of looking at me, and he said, "You know, my friends think I'm crazy for hiring a woman." And I said, "Yeah, why is that?" He said, "Well, they all think I'm going to get sued for sexual harassment." So I said, "Well, don't give me a reason and I won't sue you." I worked for Dan for 2 years and he never gave me a reason. I worked for Bob for 1 week and he gave me a million reasons. And yet it had never occurred to me to sue him. In fact, it had never even occurred to me that anything about his behavior was shocking. Thank you.
I'm telling you, when you said he had that wall of glass, I thought, oh, Lord, how bad is this going to get? Good, Dan. Good, Dan. Thank you very much. Our next guest reader is Rob Guttenberg. And so, did I say that right? Excellent. Well, we'll bring him on up. He has something really fascinating to share with us tonight. I'm really excited to see it. So let's give him a big hand.
So Alfred Adler, Sigmund Freud, and Carl Jung, the founding leaders in the development of the theory of human nature and psychotherapy that they created, they were seated together at a table in a cafe in heaven, sipping on cappuccinos as they savored their mocha torts and tiramisus. Adler introduced a fable, presenting a metaphor. There we go. Bring it up. So Adler introduced a fable, presenting a metaphor, where he suggests that the construction of houses was synonymous with the constructing of a theory on human nature and psychotherapy. And he described his own system, which he called individual psychology. And now we're going to hear a song by a friend of mine, Gary Clark, sings it. I wrote it. And our AV assistant over here, my daughter, Vladislava, is ready to go.
I built this house so we could live together. Snails and studs will conquer all bad weather. And the concepts I have found stay the course on solid ground. This foundation built with Gemeinschaftsgefühl. I built this house to help parents guide their children, to enable teachers to encourage with success. By being firm, by being kind, they can win a student's mind by demonstrating Gemeinschaftsgefühl. Open up the window, allow yourself to see the world from someone else's point of view. There's so much to discover as you gaze out on the horizon. The secrets in this home will set you free. Within this home, we will live as social equals, where mutual respect and encouragement reside. From the windows to the doors, from the ceilings to the floors, there'll be no more civil wars within this house. All these concepts I have found stay the course on solid ground, a foundation built with Gemeinschaftsgefühl. All these concepts I have found stay the course on solid ground, a foundation built with Gemeinschaftsgefühl.
So Carl Jung says, well done, Adler. I'm intrigued by your house building metaphor. Can you say more on what you mean about opening up the windows to see the world from someone else's point of view? Are you suggesting that we see things differently? Adler speaks, I believe that everything can be something else. No one of us has the correct understanding of our objective world. We all come to view the world from a subjective point of view. I'm convinced that each of us has something unique and valuable to share with one another. We all have our own private logic. Here's a story. There's a young girl who arrived for school on a cold February morning, and she was late, and the teacher said, "Why were you late for school today?" The little girl explained, "Well, it was so cold outside, the sidewalks had iced over, and you see, every step I took to come to school, I slid back 2 steps. And that's why I'm late." The teacher said, "Well, if that's true, if every step you took forward you went back 2, how did you ever get here?" And the girl thought for a second, and she smiled and looked up at the teacher. She said, "I just turned around and went home."
Everything can be something else. What seems to be may turn out to be different. A pillow feels so fine when it supports your spine. But when covering up your breath, it can lead to sudden death. Everything can be something else. We each have our own private logic. A pony ride is fun for sure until you stop and smell manure. Everything can be something else. Examine well what you expect. Take some time to re-inspect. Your first true glimpse on the spot may reveal the truth, then again it may not. Everything can be something else. What seems to be may turn out to be different. A bite of chocolate candy can be oh so sweet and dandy. But if filled with too much brandy, it can knock you off your feet. Yes, everything can be something else. We don't always agree what we think and what we see, because everything, yes, everything can be something else.
So Dr. Rudolf Dreikers is a psychoanalyst in Vienna and a major follower of Adler's, relocated from Vienna to Chicago to further the efforts to spread Adler's model around the world. At a case consultation meeting with his colleagues, he shares how some of his patients pursued their creative mischief by choosing to be unaware of what they were up to. And that leads us to this final song. Yeah, so there's these two guys, and they're up on top of a high-rise building. They're washing the windows, and it's lunchtime, and this guy opens up his lunchbox, and he says, "I can't believe it. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch." And the other guy looks at him kind of strange. Second day in a row comes, it's lunchtime, the whistle blows, and the guy opens up his lunchbox. "Peanut butter and jelly sandwich again." And the other guy looks at him a little bit weird. Third day in a row comes, it's getting to be lunchtime, and there the whistle blows, the guy leans over, he looks at his lunchbox, he says, "I've had it, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches." And the other guy says, "Look, buddy, if you don't like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, just tell your wife." He says, "You leave my wife out of this. I make my own lunches." If you don't like the taste of the food that you munch, why not try something different for lunch? Take 2 slices of bread and a marmalade spread and a teaspoon of crunchy peanut butter. If you make a mistake with the sandwich you make, you can always pretend not to do it again. When you don't want to repeat what you make, what you eat, you can send something else to your belly. And with a change of heart, you can make a new start. Just make your sandwiches without peanut butter and jelly. You may not want to know what you're up to. You may not want to take the blame. If a change in your life you can spread on your knife, you can erase all the guilt, say goodbye to the shame. Take 2 slices of bread and a marmalade spread and a teaspoon of crunchy peanut butter. If you make a mistake with the sandwich you make, you can always pretend not to do it again. When you don't want to repeat what you make, what you eat, you can send something else to your belly. With a change of heart, you can make a new start. Just make your sandwiches without peanut butter and jelly. Hey, thanks for helping me out of this jam. Thank you.
Rob, that was so worth the wait. he approached me, what is that, like 4 or 5 months ago, and gave me a copy of this musical to listen to. And this is the word that was part of the song, the first one. Go for it. Go for it? All right. Gemeinschaftsgefühl. German is not my forte. I did start off as a Spanish and French high school teacher, though, so languages do come naturally. Thank you very much, Rob, and thank you to your assistant, your lovely daughter. She did a great job. Yay! Our next reader this evening will be Catherine E. Young, and we're so happy to have her here.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Sandy Spring Museum. You know, I used to do some of what Julia does, program reading series, and it is a ton of work getting all these writers here, getting them all on the same page, telling them all exactly how long they can read, and making sure that if they go over, you give them the sign. It's a lot of work, so thank you, Julia, so much. So I am a poet, but most poets don't make a living from writing poetry, and I don't either. So I am also a literary translator from Russian. And Russian is not just the language of the Russian writers that you all know. It was a colonial language for so many millions of other people in the former Soviet Union, including Ukrainians, the people from Kazakhstan, and also Azerbaijan. And the writer I'm going to read to you tonight is an Azerbaijani writer. His name is Akram Aylisli. He is currently 87 years old. He is the most important contemporary writer in Azerbaijan. And if you're saying to yourselves, why do I not know this name? It's because no writer from Azerbaijan has been published in English since the year he was born, which was 1937. So we just don't have access to this literature, although Mr. Aylisli has been published in at least 30 languages. It's just we haven't gotten him into English until very, very recently, and I'm very happy to say I was in Azerbaijan in February where I finally got to meet him after translating him for 10 years. One thing I should tell you about him before I read this book, he fell afoul of the Azerbaijani regime in 2012 because of his writing about the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, in which he was arguing, this was in his fiction, but it was perceived as an attack on the political forces there. Azerbaijan is one of the most repressive governments on the planet. In any case, he was arguing for compassion and understanding between Azerbaijanis and Armenians who have been fighting each other off and on since the late 1980s. And his books were burned, his coffin was paraded around the apartment, the courtyard of the apartment where he lived. It's been a really difficult time for him, and he lives currently, even at age 87, under de facto house arrest in Baku. The book I'm going to read from, though, is an earlier work. It's called People and Trees. It was his big debut on the world scene. It is just now, though, coming into English, and it's a World War II book of 3 novellas and a little fable that follows the novellas about childhood and youth, and it's set in the Caucasus Mountains of Azerbaijan. If any of you watch the Country Life food vlog, where they are grilling meat and doing all kinds of amazing food, sort of in a very rustic way, that's set in Azerbaijan. So that may be the contact for you to sort of get a sense of what we're looking at here. It's an incredibly beautiful part of the world. Akram Aylisli started his life as a poet, and I hope that you'll sense some of that in what I'm going to read to you tonight. And this is the beginning of the tale of the silver tweezers. My father sold muskmelons from the collective farm in the district center, and we saw him only in the evenings. There was just our house then. There was the yard of shady trees, there were the mountains and the sun, there was me, and there was my grandmother. We also had a cow who, like my father, went out in the morning and came back only in the evening. Everything else was out there, beyond our fence. There were different houses on the other side of the fence, different trees, different people. There were big kids there. They hit the little ones. There were scary dogs there. They bit the little ones. There, beyond the fence, weddings took place. People rejoiced. There were also funerals, funeral feasts. People cried. There was me, and there was my grandmother, and in the evenings my father and the cow came back home to us. There was also another place, the other world, and on Thursday nights, when we lay down to sleep, my grandfather would come from that other world to visit us. On Thursdays, my grandmother soaped and scrubbed the whole house. She shook out my grandfather's black cordon bag and hung it on a nail in the room. She turned down the wick of the lamp and placed it to burn in the hallway, trying to keep it secret from my father. My father grumbled when he saw it, because kerosene was expensive and heavy to carry from the district center. And then, you all know, my father didn't believe in any kind of other world or any kind of God. My father slept alone in the small room. My grandmother and I slept here in the big room, and on Thursday nights the lamp burned nervously in the hallway next to our room, trying to stay hidden from my father. I was also nervous on those nights. I was very afraid of my grandfather, although my grandmother insisted that he wasn't frightening at all. He'd never in his life scared anyone, never said boo to a goose. That's the kind of man he was. And he didn't walk among us to scare us. He was checking on us, seeing how we were doing, whether we had kerosene, whether we had enough bread. And he was also finding out whether we had strayed from the path of the righteous. And because my father had strayed from the path of the righteous, my grandmother turned her face to the heavens each time she completed her prayers, urging God at length to forgive my father for his sins. My grandmother even taught me the prayer. I also began to beseech God. Lord, I'd say, repeating my grandmother's words, you are merciful and just. Forgive my father. You see yourself that they've worn the man down, always on the run. Everyone treats him badly. Forgive him his sins. Show your mercy. My grandmother said that my prayer would reach the Almighty quicker because I was an innocent child and because the angels that sit on everyone's shoulders hadn't yet inscribed a single sin on my forehead, and that God had to forgive my father because my father didn't eat stolen food. He earned his bread by the sweat of his brow. There were certain people whom God would never forgive: thieves, haters, blasphemers, those who wrote words on the mosque and washed dirty things in the spring. But at that time, those people were a long way away from me, a very long way, on the other side of the fence. There was yet another kind of place on the other side of the fence: school, where the bell rang over and over. There was a shop on the other side of the fence, near which people always shouted, quarreling over kerosene. There were all kinds of things on the other side of the fence, but all of them were a long way away, a very long way. There was me, and I had a grandmother, and the two of us understood one another very well. When the sparrows twittered in the crowns of trees or the magpies screeched, we were certain that they were talking among themselves. I was certain, and my grandmother was certain too. In the evenings, when the sun sank behind the mountain, neither of us doubted that the sun was going to sleep. We both knew every single one of the magpie chips that nested in the old pear tree, my grandmother and I. Catching sight of a bat, we'd both freeze in fear, my grandmother and I. And it was only on the other side of the fence that my grandmother became different. She knew everyone there. I didn't know anyone. She wasn't afraid of anyone. I was afraid of everyone. The book is called People and Trees, and the author is Akram Eilisley. Thank you.
Mad impressed. Mad impressed. I did do some translating work very early on. I actually am proud to say that 20-some years ago, I was the first translator of the International Association for Reiki into Spanish. Yeah, you can applaud for that. That's fine. Our next writer is somebody who has read for us in the past many times, and always love having Walter come and read for us. So Walter Weinshank, come on down. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. I just want to say thank you so much for all you do, because this is always a wonderful showcase. And thank you, Sandy Spring Museum, because this is a wonderful center of culture and art. So I'll launch right into it. This is a short story called Horses. And Horses was published a couple of years ago in a journal called The Normal School. Now, I can't read the whole thing because it's too long, but I am going to read the introduction, and in fact, I've had to abridge the introduction to fit it into our program. So at any rate, just to forewarn you, this is the world from in the mind and the view of a horse. So it's about horses. Anyway, okay. I think as I run, the physical act of running is not difficult, at least in most cases, day or night. It's instinctual, relatively easy to steer with legs and hooves outstretched as they are above the ground. Thoughts, however, are otherwise much harder to manage. Thoughts don't run in formation, but rise like imperfect atoms from the depths of horse being, through and beyond the atmosphere of consciousness. They transcend the gravity of memory as often as not, dissipate like rays of light, and are gone forever. Some remain, however, and those that remain are tangible. They merge and melt and run together like some psychic river, flood the cells and grottos of the mind, and I am thereby afflicted by thoughts, consumed by a mental miasma, an admixture of questions, answers, epiphanies, noise, and drivel. I am lost within it as I mash the wide expanse with heavy hooves. My thoughts coalesce like strands of stars through a cooling universe. I run and I think of all of us, horses, normal or not, dazzling or dull, dynamic, beleaguered, vital or frail, perverse or even-keeled. We are what we are, we always are. Said another way, we are this or that and that. One or the other and the other, present, evanescent, luminous, and dim, colors mingled, features mangled, growing or dying as we ramble along the desert's edge. Prowess, decrepitude, all of it, each and every differentiation, all derivative in the final analysis, basically the same. But having traveled from there to here, I conclude that we are standard, unassailably standard. Perhaps I am not standard. It's a matter of degree. Different, but hardly different, as you drift farther away from the here and now and day to day. And the distance widens, expands as you circumnavigate the world and rise above it, so that the world you've chosen becomes so small and insignificant over time that it crumbles like alfalfa or melts like snow in your mouth. I love a placid sky, don't you? I hate a placid sky, don't you? Confusing. All these things merge as you waft away, wander far, fade further until there comes a point at which it hardly matters, because at that point you lack the capacity to discern a difference, or perhaps you cease to care. These are my thoughts, my horse thoughts. I think of what we are, alive until our bones chip and break beneath the weight. We are singular but identical, distinctive but the same, like rain and snow. All as all horses are, ever have been or will be. Unique but the same, like crisscross clouds in a trellis of clouds, wisps of diddy dots across the crumpled sky. On the one hand, our dissimilarities abound, and in fact, we notice the most minute differences. We compare and assess color of hide, onset of limp, luxuriance of tail, length of stride, and so on. Yet, we are indistinguishable. We trample with dulled hooves across the gravelly ground, just like those who rode long ago, the old herds that ran rampant. We run as one, staunch and impassive, and though we are Pinto, Palomino, Bay, Roan, it doesn't matter because we are the same. We are one soul, one enterprise, one array that thrusts forth in perpetual motion and straight pursuit headlong into pitiless wind. We race at full pace, long furled bones stretched out like need across the footbridge of consciousness at speeds you could hardly imagine, hostage to some innate impulse, some inviolate sense of mission. Stop, drink, eat, sleep, and all the while we never acknowledge one another, but amble about as if we are alone, respectively. We know each other, we see each other, we study each other in painstaking detail, but we ignore each other. It is a strange proclivity that I don't understand, but this is the way we are, and there is no satisfactory explanation of one's own nature, no way to escape the essence of one's own horse being, no way to undermine the absoluteness of one's self. My horse consciousness was somehow formulated and affixed to the floor of my being long before I was born. It is therefore not surprising that my hooves fit squarely within ancient prints imprinted in rock that once was mud through which horses ran eons ago. These ancient hooves continue to resound with the sound of horses rioting in even rhythm. They were horses, not fish-minded, not insect-minded, not other-minded, and it is the same with me, because I am one in a long, long line, no different than any horse yet to be born. I know the world as only a horse can know it. It cannot be otherwise. Thank you.
I would just like to say, every time I host one of these events, I am always surprised and amazed and fascinated at the different types of work being shared. It's just always such a pleasure to me to see all of the different kinds of things people are working on and bringing to share with the world and with us. And I don't know, I just think it's a really cool thing. So this has been a great first half of the show, and I'm looking forward to the second half now. Next up, we're going to welcome Daniel Garrett, who has the best bio on this program. Daniel.
I was going to read some political stuff, but it's way too dark for this group. So instead, I'm just going to riff on the beauty of the scattered beings that I see in front of me. No, I'll read a small set of kind of... although I kind of look like an old poet, I'm not really. I just play one in the movie in my head. So, and I'm much funnier than my poems, so I'm sorry, because a kind of a darkness comes out. But anyway, let me get this over with. So I beg your forgiveness. These are just 3. Hopefully, if it goes over, I've had that done to me, so, but it was a surgeon. Okay, the first one is like, got to change, okay. This is called precedence. I think perhaps we do not think so much about all the work that has gone into making us. The wooing of the woman, the acceptance of the man, the grinding and the sweating and the howling, the long gestation in the soft light of the womb to the sounds of the mother's heart perpetuating the oceanic circulation of her blood. The 15 billion years or so for this little universe to bloom a bit, and all the stillbirths of those other universes which weren't quite right. Instead, the immediacy of our days keeps us plodding on, nor do we often ask to what end. But it is to this one. My daughter angry, I shaved my beard. The furnace in the basement shuddering into life as the snow commences again to snow. The commotion of the birds at the bird feeder jostling for the last of the seed. And this line here coming to an end, just so. But then it goes on again. I'm lucky to have all this ersatz tranquility when so many have so little. I give my thanks and offer it to all sentient beings, whatever that means, wherever they are in their temporary but ongoing perpetual culmination of a whole lot of work. And to the putative Supreme Being, I also offer praise, garbled and confused and marbled through with doubt though it be. But still, the Laudamus and the Laudanum and the Sanctus are basically clear, as is my realization that I must get more birdseed soon. This one is called Invitation Declined, which is what I should have done for this reading, right? They invited me into the forest that night. There where the moon lingered in soft blue luminosity, I told them that I would come when it was time, when I was dead. And they reminded me that I was already dead, that there was no great distinction between the two, that those that dwell in the body do so because it is a dream that comforts them. And I did so clearly need the comfort of the moon's tranquility, shining there amongst the trees where the voices that speak meaningfully, understanding as they do the roads the soul must take. But I turned away that time, seduced into their pure bliss though I was, but still I felt them going with me for a ways into this strange world that makes no sense, where even the ebbing and flowing balm of the moon goes unheeded. And so I am naked now, and am indeed also quite dead, if that is what it must be called. But what seeps from me still, here where I have tripped and fallen into matter and muttering, is the very sweetness that lifted up these trees. And they will lift up again as the moon calls them, as all the entwinements of lovers call them, as the simplicity of God, not God, calls them again to grow and bless us with their soaring, sweeping, swooping, bending majesty. The light, now blue and unwavering, our skin, now palpable with bliss, flickers in and out of existence laughing to have mistaken for such, when all along it was but one of the roads the soul must take as it meanders towards the healing of the moon and the clearing in the trees, where our children wait patiently to give us birth. Dreams, my friends, will never mislead you, but beware, beware those waking places that repeat a name over and over again until you mistake it for your own. I've mistaken my name for my own, evidently. But last one, I think I've got time, hopefully. I'm tentatively calling it long division. No math involved, though, thankfully. Okay. I couldn't figure out what it was that divided us. We who are so much the same that the parts are pretty much interchangeable. Even death doesn't divide us this way so much as recombine us in a great artistic re-rendering of old into new. No, that cannot be our great divide. So then I thought it must be the things in our heads, thoughts, words, ideas that have their claws sunk in so deep we no longer see our common sky, or the even more exalted common ground upon which we stand. But no one pays attention to what people say, so I thought there must be something deeper that has divided our house, so that it barely stands. Maybe the design itself is flawed. All the warmth and food and views going to one gilded room, while all the rest labor in a cold gloom, the plight of their children growing worse, but that problem too seemed all too easy to fix. So in the end, I couldn't say what it was keeping us apart. And in my despondency, there rose up a vision of America, a brown woman giving the rainbow milk. It's my daughter. Last verse. So in the end, I couldn't say what it was keeping us apart. And in my despondency, there rose up a vision of America, a brown woman giving the rainbow milk of her breasts to her twins, a black child and a white child. And her love, her milk, was abundant enough for all. And that divide that divided us, no one could remember it or countenance even the absurdity that it might once ever have been. So beautiful is this motherhood.
That was wonderful. Thank you. It's always the danger of reading off of your phone is when a family member starts texting you while you're reading. All right, so our next reader will be Courtney LeBlanc. I'm so glad to have you back with us again, Courtney.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Sandy Springs Museum. I love reading here. I always paint my nails black, and sometimes my husband teases me and says black again. They make other colors right. And of course they do, but I love black polish, and every time my nails are freshly painted, I feel sexy as fuck, and so I'm probably not going to get any other color. And in art, black is the presence of all colors. And my friend Paula always painted her nails dark too, and she's dead now. And I knew the day she was going to do it, the exact date I knew it, and I forgot to call. And I forgot to text. And I know I couldn't have saved her, and I hope the water she walked into held her, and I hope the pills she swallowed gentled her journey. And sometimes I go whole days without thinking of her, and then I feel like shit. But I know she'd want me to forget. And I do think of her whenever I read a sexy poem because she wrote such damn good sexy poems, and I think she'd like that I think of her then. And the first person who asked me how I wanted to be touched painted his pinky nails black each weekend and removed it each Monday morning. And I can still see his face. And I still remember his hands on my body, and it was the first time I wasn't afraid of my body or its pleasure. And that was the same summer Push by Matchbox 20 was playing nonstop on the radio. And the lead singer painted his nails black too, and it was the first time I'd seen polish on a guy, and I liked it, and I was 18. And I just moved into my first basement apartment, and I was f***ing Britt, the boy with the black painted pinkies, and I was so young. And so free. And back then, I rarely painted my nails, and now I'm never without polish. And my best friend loves pedicures, and she always gets the same color too, a shade of red called I'm Not Really a Waitress. And she tried to die several times, but she's still here, and I'm so f***ing grateful. She finally found a treatment to rewire her brain. And I wish Paula was still here and had found peace and was still writing sexy poems and still painting her nails dark. But she's not. So I am. Thank you. I'm reading tonight from my new collection, Her Whole Dark Everything. Thank you. It just came out last week. It is in June of 23, my dear friend Paula died by suicide. And around the same time, my best friend, who suffers from chronic, long-term, severe, medicine-resistant depression, started ketamine treatments for her depression, and it saved her life. So this book is part elegy to my friend who died and part love poem to my friend who survives. And I think that relationships that are platonic are underrated. And I think that for women, especially as we age, there is nothing like a best friend. And so she got a whole book, and she's very nervous. She hasn't read it yet. She knows about it, though. This poem is titled All at Once. Everyone is posting pictures with twinkling lights. A bomb is dropped and a child's scream needs no translation. A friend on the other side of the world walks into a river, no rocks sewn into the hem because none are needed. Ketamine flows through my best friend's brain, and a new path is forged, and she begins to follow it out of the darkness. You allow yourself another cookie, and for once, don't feel guilty about it. It begins to snow in Boston, and across the country, someone posts a video of downhill skiing in the mud. You sign up for yoga, a month of Sundays, even though you don't really like all the spiritual, my inner teacher sees and acknowledges your inner teacher bullshit. Your sister signs a lease, and you mail a care package to her new address. A conflict everyone predicted would be over in weeks passes the 2-year mark. You spend $270 on groceries, and your spouse still says there's nothing to eat in the house. You take a muscle relaxer most nights and worry you're taking it too often. An ex-lover sends a message, and you leave it unread for days. You look at the calendar and realize the year is almost over. You write a list. You avoid the news. It snows where your mother lives, but you don't call her. You write in your journal. You think about the next year, your new goals, the way you're beginning to forget the sound of your father's voice. The lights are twinkling, but they block out the stars. Somewhere, a woman dies, a lung full of water and a dark heart. Somewhere, a baby swims through the birth canal, pushes into the light. You don't believe in reincarnation, but what if? What if? Thank you. I changed my lineup after hearing what Jessica read. So this poem, I think, ties in nicely with what she started us off with tonight. It's titled, Poem Where I Apologize for Being a Woman. Of course it's my fault. I obviously don't know how to take a joke. And yes, you're right. It was a compliment. And what woman wouldn't want her body commented on by a stranger passing on the street? Yes, I wore this dress, these shorts, this ruffled tank top for your viewing pleasure. Not because I feel comfortable, confident, cute in it. Of course, when you watched that woman walking away, you were thinking about her accomplishments, her goals, and not the swish of her hips, the sway of her ass. I'm sure the man that got the promotion I interviewed for is highly qualified and uniquely positioned to lead the office I've been a part of for 6 years. And yes, I do know how to do a chest press and lat pull-downs, but thank you very much for your offer to assist me. Oh yes, it is a bit dramatic, all this Me Too stuff. I mean, Bill Cosby went to jail for a little while, and eventually Harvey Weinstein was punished. Never mind, it took years and left dozens of destroyed women in their wake. And you're right. If we aren't careful, it'll swing the other way, and women will be the majority, lawyers and doctors and dentists, and we wouldn't want that. True, we have our first female vice president, and she's a woman of color at that. We should be happy. That really is more than we could have hoped for. But maybe apologizing. Maybe saying I'm sorry when I'm really not, when I've done something wrong, when I have nothing to apologize for. And I have one final poem I'm going to read for you. I said there were love poems in here, so I'm going to end on that. This is a love poem to my best friend, and it's titled Belly Dancing as Love Poem. Years ago, we took a belly dancing class together, which was basically us just laughing at one another as we attempted to mimic our teacher's fluid hips, swinging side to side like liquid sex, laughing when the teacher told me I didn't have enough belly and you didn't have enough butt, and we agreed, but that didn't stop us from trying. Our hips wrapped with gemstone-colored scarves, mine green and yours fuchsia, gold bells tinkling softly, the perfect accompaniment to our laughter and clunky movements. Our hips not so much sashaying as jerking from side to side, each shift of our bodies timed to our raucous laughter, and I never danced for a lover. Never wore that emerald scarf outside of class, never dared display my not as sexy as I imagine moves for another. Only you witnessed me. Arms above my head, eyes closed as I moved my body to the same music you heard. And when I opened my eyes, I saw you'd done the same. Eyes closed, arms up. And I knew in that moment I'd never love anyone as much as I loved you. Thank you.
What a gorgeous love letter. Absolutely beautiful. And on a more somber note, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the topic that Courtney was speaking on. Times are hard right now. You are wanted. You are needed. Please stay. And make sure you tell people that. Please stay. That's all I want to say about that. The piece I'm going to end with tonight is another piece about, I guess, female friendship, and I'm sorry, some bad male behavior. It was a piece called Casting Stones, and it appeared in Gargoyle magazine originally. I have to set it up for you because it's quite a long story, and I'm only going to read the final section of it. The main character is in a nursing home and witnessed an assault on her roommate by a staff member. And in response to that and her son's refusal to believe her, she has intentionally withdrawn from the world and is behaving as though she is catatonic. And everybody believes that and treats her as such, except for her new roommate, who is vivacious, flirtatious, and irritating as hell. This is the final scene of the book. It is called Pillow Talk. The festivities finally end, the visitors leave, and we are put to bed early by a skeleton staff of broke volunteers and grumpy short stick winners. I breathe a sigh of relief when everyone settles down and the floor is peaceful at last. Shortly after lights out, however, our door opens. The hall light silhouettes Matt briefly as he hurries past the foot of my bed to Ginger. The creamed chipped beef curdling in my gut suddenly decides to do its job as I envision him straddling her. I close my eyes and steel myself in preparation. But something's different tonight in the sly rustling of the sheets, the flustered souse of the mattress. I wait for the familiar catch and release of Matt's boozy breath when he finishes. Long moments pass, warped and silent. I tilt my head up a fraction of an inch because I realize Matt is whispering. Hopefully you go faster than O'Brien did, he grunts in a way I haven't heard before. Ginger's bed frame rattles, making it harder for me to hear, so I lift my head a titch more. And Mrs. Rosenberg, another grunt that nailed me in the nuts before she finally died. I can't stop my gasp. Banshee loud in this room. My mind races. Mrs. Margaret O'Brien? My friend Judy Moody? Does he mean he? Matt stops whispering and I freeze. I am a stone. I am a stone. I I knew you were in there. I jump at the words so close to my ear, and then the pillow slams down on my face. Matt's fingers dig into my nose through the pillow's thin spots, and his body presses me into the mattress. My wasted legs and twisted hands flutter up like broken birds. Bright stars erupt behind my eyes, a fiery galaxy of pain and infirmity, betrayal and abandonment, loneliness and degradation. My dying stars cool and harden, the vast black hole of me coming at last to swallow the world whole. Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Charles, I am a stone. I am a... The pillow vanishes, and something strikes the bed hard and thuds to the floor, but I'm coughing and gasping and crying too hard to think what. My bright stars dim and flicker, blurring and diminishing until they coalesce into the form of Ginger, who is standing beside my bed holding Carmen's scissors. Hello there, she says, panting. There is a dark smear down the front of her pink nightgown. I look around the room. There is a mat-shaped lump on the floor between our beds. I can't see if it's still breathing. Are you okay? She asks. She lowers herself onto my bed and whooshes out a Chanel No. 5 scented breath. The scissors dangling from her hand gleam stickily, drawing my eyes like a greedy fly to a honeypot. I lick my lips. They fell out when he grabbed your pillow. I snatched them, Ginger says. She drops the scissors on the table between our beds and wipes her hands on my blanket. Still confused, I glance down at her bare feet. Yeah, I'm stronger than I let on. Just like you, she says. Are you kidding? These legs? She stretches them out before her and slaps them hard. I could still dance all day, she says defensively. What can I say? It gets me a little extra attention from my family. We do what we've got to survive, right? The sudden hardness in her voice embraces me like an old friend. We both look at the lump on the floor, which is stirring slightly. You think a former Rockette doesn't know when someone's been after her? I'm old, but I'm no nun, she continues. She nudges Matt with her toes, and he groans. Bastard. I suspected it was him, but I wasn't sure. I was too groggy. So I started skipping pills trying to catch him, since no one else would. I thought he might be in tonight for a little old lang syne. I am stunned. On the Mohs scale of hardness, I realized this woman would score an 11. But Jesus, when he put that pillow over your face, well, I took care of it, she says. And that hardness turns to brittle pride. All my life I took care of myself. It's good to know I still can. She winks, and I grab for her hands. Thank you, I say. My voice crackles like fresh exam table paper. A slow grin shimmies across her face. I knew you were in there, she says. She leans closer, and her voice deepens to a fierce whisper. Look, I don't blame you for checking out, for staying quiet. Being stuck in here is no easy thing. Her eyes glitter like cracked open geodes as she takes in our room. The matching hospital beds and wheelchairs and potty chairs, the gray walls festooned with monitors and tubing and cuffs. The bilious curtains hiding our view of the concrete parking lot and the rusting dumpster outside. Her eyes come back to rest on Matt, who is beginning to moan. Well, she reaches over me, pushes my call button, and returns to her own bed to wait for the help that will eventually come. The rush of disappointment I feel at this surprises me. I lie back down and turn away from her to face the door. If you don't want me to tell anyone, I won't. I'll leave you out of it, Ginger says to my back. But this is a tough place, especially alone. If you ever do feel like checking back in, she leaves the invitation there. I don't reply. Instead, I use the time before the staff comes in and finds Matt, certified nursing assistant, cruise director, and rapist, bleeding on our floor to weigh my options, such as they are in this hard, hard place. By the time the volunteer and the short sticker, whose names I don't know, come running into the room, out of habit or out of fear, I am a stone once again. Well, mostly. Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left before our time in this wonderful space together ends, and we will need to start clearing out. So I would like to thank once again all of our marvelous readers. Thank you for your words, for your community, for the care that you have shown to each other, and to our audience members for all of the care and support you have shown by being here tonight and showing up for the arts. We thank you to our video crew that is working on, so this is Montgomery Municipal Cable Television, and I would like to invite you all to spend the last few minutes here together tonight going and purchasing some of the books for these wonderful folks so that they can keep doing what they are doing, because the arts matter, our words matter, our community matters, and you matter. Thank you for being here tonight.